The more you try to keep me down and keep my head above the water, you can never hold me down. The more you try to block me out, that's where I kick the wall down. You can never hold me back. The more you try to put me out, the more I'll be blazing, it's too hot. The more you try to put me in the dirt, increase my work, the expert. You see the hunger in the eyes of a survivor.
It's tonight. It is another Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Casey. This is Pinecase. It has been such an interesting, interesting journey, checking out your journey. And so I would really like if you can bring some context to how one becomes so light and lovely and full of positivity in such a crazy, challenging space these days. I mean, there's a lot of controversial things happening in the news, and, you know, we're coming out of kind of dark times, and we're talking about socially where we were not that long ago. But you seem to be just this radiant, lovely human being. And I was like, how does one do this? Like, please tell us all the tips and tricks on how one becomes the lovely Fawna.
Well, it's not all rainbows and unicorns and butterflies, I'll say that much. Life gets real, and it's definitely like been weird as an artist lately, to create and put, your art out there when there is so many like horrible things going on in the world right now, and it almost feels like selfish. But I don't know, I think we need art, I think like we need that like glimmer of hope, and we need connection, and music has always been sort of like my outlet, just like my release of like, my trauma, my pain, and a way to transmute it. And I think it's just I've always felt like I had to share it, and I just been trying to keep the train rolling basically. And I mean, just for me, it's like it's all about authenticity. A lot of my music comes from my own experiences, and like the lessons that like I've learned from those, and the different places that I've been, phases of my life. And I've come a long way, I'll say that much. I mean, I guess that's just how it comes off. Like, I feel like a lot of my like, lyrical direction will often like delve into, like the darker elements of life, but then like bring it up, like end it on like, almost like a hopeful note that, like I'm learning, like I'm growing, and here I am now, like, more empowered kind of thing. And a lot of my songs I find are like often letters to myself, just to like almost empower myself and remind myself like, I'm not my mistakes, like I've grown kind of thing. So I mean, if people get that from my music, then that's amazing. Like that's exactly what I want, for sure.
That's such a beautiful thing. I think people forget that and how challenging it can be, right? Because we get caught up in just our own pressures. But when you're producing something or creating something to not only be like therapeutic for yourself, but possibly therapeutic for others, there's a lot to take into consideration. So I have mad respect for anybody who not only like pushes through that, but also exposes that part of their life or their trauma or their trials and tribulations.
I mean, like, I mean, by no means is like are my struggles like worse than anybody else's, or like there's far more worse things going on in the world. But I think like everybody has like a unique story, and like something to like share with the world. And like I think there is, there needs to be awareness of like what's going on in the world. Like it's a balance, because there is such thing as like toxic positivity and like just only acknowledging, the good stuff, and like not acknowledging like the hard truths, and what's going on. But I think it's like a balance. I think you can't have one without the other. And I think that's like how I've approached my music. You can't have the light without the dark. And like,
right.
Yeah.
I've never heard toxic positivity before. I've always heard like ignorance is bliss and things like that, but that's such an
Mm.
interesting way to put it because, yeah, if you're not acknowledging the negative or any of it and you're just kind of strolling through life, I can see how that would be, that can make for disaster
Yeah.
really quickly, right? Yeah,
For
wild.
sure. A lot of people can, I mean, like there's all sorts, but I mean, yeah, like a lot of people who like preach, like positive love and light, and like that like yogi lifestyle, but are they doing the shadow work, within themselves and, like really like taking a hard look at themselves kind of thing. So I think it's a balance,
I always picture people like putting themselves out there like that and then just wiling out in their personal life and just being like, "This is crazy," like, behind the
Mm,
scenes, right? They're like, "Da, da, da, da,
yeah,
you need to do
it
these,
can
like, 5
be.
steps to be a great
Yeah, no, it
person."
can be super performative for sure. Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like anything online. It's like, it's not like the whole truth. Like the image people present of themselves with these like perfect lives, like it's like, it's not all as it seems. So it's better to just be real, like, and I've struggled with that, like I have struggled like being vulnerable publicly and like sharing my like true authentic self in all
Right.
versions of me like online and kind of like bridging that into, Fauna.
Mm,
Um because I think like in the beginning I was very like, a lot of my music was still coming from like that raw like, a real place, but the way that I like shared myself and presented myself and who I was and like my story. Like that was really hard for me to do, because it's like high risk, high reward kind of thing. Like it's like you
yeah.
put yourself out there, and give people an opportunity to like connect with you more and relate to you more. But then you're also opening up like, the possibility for like more scrutiny or, so or more judgment. So yeah, it's like um, but yeah, I'm trying to lean a little bit more into just like caring less
Yeah.
and just like
Yeah.
showing up as I am, like, no like hour and a half like, glam, makeup before I get on the camera and
Right,
like
right.
because I have like in the past like I've been like hyper fixated on like my image and my branding and like staying this mysterious, cool artist that doesn't give too much away. But I just feel like that's
Right.
boring. That's boring now. I feel like people want like authenticity. They want to know who you are because it's such a saturated industry now. Like there's so many artists. So like there's only one you. So you might as
Yeah.
well just do you, you know?
I find that the more I look at my own content, when I first started posting things, I was like really exposed about whether or not I was wearing foundation. I'm like, sorry guys, blah blah. I'm not out here trying
Mm,
to do all that. And I've gone back and looked at it and like, ugh, why would I do that? And then people are like, yeah, but you are real, and what you were saying was more important than what you looked like. And I think you're right. When you're constantly curating yourself, it puts a really massive roadblock between you and your consumers, you and your followers, your friends, and your family, right? And they don't. It
yeah.
just becomes less palatable down the road. I definitely I can appreciate the idea that people can relate and just get a peek into maybe like who you genuinely are, right? Because anyone can run some stuff through a soundboard, and that's not to take away from the art or the artistry of music. But when you find somebody that not only sounds really great and is coming from a genuine place, but looks and acts kind of like them in bits and pieces, I think it's
Mm,
definitely lends to just a better society, and not
yeah.
that it's always about the kids, but at the same time, like I'm a mom, and I have a hard time sometimes being like, that's your role model, like, okay, well, you can
Yeah.
do all of that, but you're gonna need, like, 3 different filters and a credit card. Right?
Exactly, exactly. It's unrealistic, beauty standards and yeah, like I grew up with that, I grew up in the early 2000s, and I feel like it was like, yeah, like during that time, my younger years, it was like a lot more, prominent. And I feel like over the last like decade, I've really kind of leaned into more of my own like style. And, I'm not like so much gearing towards the male gaze anymore,
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
before I was like, oh yeah, I gotta appeal to the male gaze. And like now I'm just like, like, you know, just myself, whatever
Yeah.
I feel comfortable in, as long as I feel good, if it's not your cup of tea, like that's okay. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's somebody that is.
Honestly, that I think the sweat equity that goes into making sure that it's not about like, I mean, it's easy to lend to that audience, obviously. Historically, it's been the easiest market to tap into. And Pinecase is
Mhm.
men's mental health and music. And when it started, everyone was like, tits and teeth, easy. And I was like, okay, whoa, wait, we need a little bit more substance. There's more substance to it than that. And I think even the
Yeah.
male audience can attest to it when they see some, especially a female that's like maybe even attainable. It becomes way more interesting than
Mhm.
necessarily a centerfold, or at least the dudes that I associate with, right? Like, it's nice to be able to be put on a pedestal, especially as a female. I mean, we all love that feeling, but if we can
Mhm.
get there without having to slap on 9 layers of spackle and drywall, then I think we're going to be better off in society for
I
sure.
agree. I think everybody will be a lot more comfortable for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So what kind of things inspire your music outside of maybe your personal experiences?
Well, I would say like my musical upbringing, my musical influences definitely have a hand in, the directions I've gone throughout my career. I kind of grew up around kind of like a mix of like R&B blues, uh alt rock, grunge. Like my dad was a metalhead.
Yeah, metalheads.
Yeah, but then also like introduced me to like yeah, like Snoop Dogg and like Eminem, not that those are like my like, inspirations, but it was like
Mhm.
quite like a diverse like music education. So yeah, I would say I'm like R&B like leaning, I would say. But I feel like there's always like been an emo kid inside of me. So
I think there's
I call it R&B mo.
ah!
That's
I
my
love
genre.
that. That's awesome. I think there's a little emo inside of everyone, and we don't
I
we
think
don't
so
always
too.
necessarily say it. Yeah, when I was I used to love when people would be like, "Oh, I went to, the Spice Girls," and then next week they're like, "Oh, I seen Corn," and I was like, "Oh, interesting. Who are your parents? Like, how do you
Yeah.
get to that place?"
That's an interesting
What?
combination for sure.
Yeah, totally
But
right.
yeah, I definitely like had a diverse yeah, like music education like growing up. And yeah, it's weird because like none of my family members are musicians or anything like that. But yeah,
Oh,
like me and my dad like shared a pretty big bond like with music, and like my mom too. Um and yeah, it just it never left. It never left me. It was always been like, my first love. And I definitely like get inspired by like other artists and stuff. And I'm always changing. Like right now I'm kind of leaning into like kind of like the realm of EDM. I've
oh, yeah, yeah,
been working with some EDM producers because yeah, I'm going to be playing. I'm kind of trying to get into the festival scene.
yeah. Nice.
So kind of tailoring my set like a little bit towards that. So I've been experimenting with like, yeah, like I've put out some future bass stuff, some drum and bass stuff. Like I dropped a drum and bass track, shout out to Aspen King, like last
Yes.
summer. And yeah, I'm really excited. I'm gonna be dropping another EDM track, deep house track with a Montreal producer named Jin
Wow.
this summer. So yeah, lots of collabs coming through. It's gonna be like a big summer for collabs and releases
Ah,
and stuff. And yeah, I'm also like releasing my second solo EP That's been like the last 4 years of songs accumulated, finally releasing them into the universe.
That's super exciting. Congratulations on all of that. That's awesome. Actually, Aspen is on the show this week.
I saw that. That's awesome. Yeah,
so I've heard so many great things. DJ Lion was on too, and he was like, yeah, shout out to Aspen. So I'm really excited to have a conversation for sure. When it comes to collabs, like you touched on going into the EDM world, is there any other specifics that like make you want to work with certain people or have collabs with certain people, or are there things that like you come across that you're like, I'm not attaching my, beautiful wagon to this half lame horse?
I've been on a journey with collabs, I'll say that much. Like starting off in the industry, like my first EDM song I ever released actually, which was Reverie. I think that was like 2014 or something like that. It's been a while. But anyways, like it was fun making the song, but also like my first like label experience. And they had like a lot of control, and like I didn't know my shit back then, where you like got to get your royalties and like your SoCan like profile set up and all this stuff. So like I learned some hard lessons in the beginning, just like kind of not getting my ducks in a row and not really like knowing my worth. But yeah, like as the years have gone by, like I've definitely gotten a little more like discerning of like who is like a good collaborator and like, maybe who's more like self-serving. Like for me, a perfect collab is somebody that like sees me as an equal, as like an equal collaborator. And, like it can happen in a lot of different ways. Sometimes like someone will send me a beat and like I'll write over that and we'll make something new. And then, we'll like rework it around my vocals. Sometimes like I'll have an idea and, they'll work instrumentals around that. So it can happen a couple of different ways, but I think as long as it like stays about like the music and like not our egos, not like whose idea is best, or them kind of control my sound like too much, or like make a lot of demands or anything like that. Like that's not my kind of collab. Like I think like recognizing each other's strengths like as artists and like playing into those and just having like that trust is like really important for a collab for me.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's hard, not necessarily hard to come by, but probably hard for people to follow through on, right? Because it's easy to say like and get a vibe right off the bat, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be wicked, and then you're halfway through the project, and they're like, I own everything, and you're like, oh, okay,
yeah. Well, that's why you do that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Before you send anything over, I go over like, okay, what are the splits going to be? Are you comfortable with this? Are you good with that? Contracts. We make contracts for these things.
Yeah.
Now. We do now. But I would just say, for me, it's like if the song resonates with me, then I'll it doesn't matter if you're a popular artist or not. Like I've worked with some bigger artists, some emerging artists that, are just starting out. And to me, it's like, it's not about like status or, popularity. It's like, do I hear something on this track? Like, do I get like a heart flutter when I listen to it kind of thing? Like you kind of just know when like, you can do something cool on something. It's kind of just like a feeling. But I don't try to force it. Like, it's like, I've definitely been in situations where I've like heard, I've been sent a song and it's like, it's good, but does it feel like something that I would sing? Like, not necessarily. So sometimes you have to make those decisions as well. And because I'm like a recovering yes man.
Ooh, I feel like I've had so many conversations with that particular situation lately, and what that means to be like a people pleaser, and how I feel I've never been that person, thankfully, but I definitely understand how that could be a slippery slope because obviously we want everyone around us to be comfortable and happy. But when
Yeah,
it's at the detriment to yourself, then yeah, you got to pump the brakes real quick. So,
for sure. It's been a journey with that as well. I
mm,
think just like, knowing when you've reached your capacity and like, maintaining boundaries and like, you know, being comfortable with disappointing people sometimes, I
right,
think is key. Which yeah, like again, I've struggled with, but am working on.
right,
So
right.
so yeah, just getting more discerning and like a little bit pickier, because like my time is precious, and a lot of the times like I'm like, I've got a million collabs, and then I'm still out here trying to finish my EP, which is often like put last. So we're trying to prioritize that and
Yeah,
yeah, get the collabs wrapped up. But I am really excited to put these ones out. Yeah, this
very
summer.
cool.
It's
Very,
gonna be
very.
dope.
When you look for festivals, is there one that like screams that you're like that totally where I need to be, or are you just kind of going with it this summer?
Um, well, for me, it's like quality over quantity for me. Like I've definitely done like longer tours. Like it's gonna be like a more chill summer for me, just because I am focusing on like kind of tying up loose ends and getting my releases like wrapped up and stuff. But
Mm.
yeah, it'd be dope to play Shambhala eventually. Base Coast, that'd be sick.
Yeah,
But I am playing Future Forest
nice.
Festival August 9th that weekend.
Oh, that's my
Um,
birthday.
no way.
Yeah, yeah, I might have to come out for that. Yeah,
Oh
definitely.
man, it's actually kind of like a mini Shambhala, like so I've heard.
Yes, yeah.
Same kind of vibe. But yeah,
Okay.
that's in New Brunswick, and yeah, I'm super excited for that. It's an evening
That's
festival.
awesome. That's not I like
Yeah,
I'm closer because you're in BC, right?
I'm in Montreal
You're
actually.
in my oh,
Yeah,
I should probably read the EVKs, hey?
that's okay. Well, hey, I mean,
Wow.
I'm awake. It's like 10:30 here, but like this is like yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a night owl, so it's no biggie.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm in Edmonton, so we're sitting at like 8 o'clock, just after 8.
Oh, okay. Cool, cool.
Mhm. Are you from, Montreal?
I'm not. I'm actually from Nova Scotia, born and
Oh, okay.
raised.
So
Yeah,
you're
I moved
going
out
back home for the festival?
yeah, like halfway, because
Mhm.
like yeah, New Brunswick is like on the way to Nova Scotia. But yeah, I moved to Montreal like about 11 years ago, roughly. And it
Yeah.
was for school actually, because I was going to Nova Scotia School of Art and Design, and I was like going to school for video. Actually, that's
Yeah.
like my second love. I'm also like a video editor. That's my side gig.
Oh, is it
Um,
now? That'll
yeah, that's how she pays the bills. But yeah, I know I went to school for that, and I decided to transfer to Concordia just because it's like, yeah, it had a better
Mm.
program for my specific medium. So,
Yeah,
and then
graduated from Concordia 2010, so I totally understand, yeah. Very
nice,
cool.
nice.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. Oh, that's so interesting. I'm like, "Oh, video editor, because I might need your help after this," but it sounds like
Hey,
you're
girl, hit me
probably
up.
okay.
No, I'm a freelancer, so I've got flexibility. But
Very
yeah, yeah, so I do that on the side, but honestly, like it was the music scene that kind of like made me want to stay. Also, like
mm.
the cheap rent. The rent's like
Yeah,
decent here.
yeah,
It's going up, but like it's very affordable. But
yeah.
yeah, like the art scene here, the music scene here, it's just very vibrant. And yeah, like Fawna was kind of born in Montreal actually, because up until I moved here, I was just kind of in bands.
Mm,
Just like as like the lead or like the supporting vocals, but it wouldn't be like always my songs or my lyrics, it would be a lot of me like joining in on other people's projects. And then until like I came here, and like kind of immersed myself in like the community here, like the music scene here, a lot of the local musicians and stuff. Then I kind of started building up my confidence, being like, oh, maybe I can release some of my own music. Like maybe people will like it. So I definitely like got my start here. Just playing in like shitty dive bars and then bigger bars, like, and it kind of grew from there. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't have gotten this far without just like the community and like the different artists I've met here that have inspired me and that have like helped me along the way as well. So yeah.
Do you think that they're like the scene out there is a little bit more shameless? I feel like I don't know if you have much of an experience with like the West Coast specifically, but is there
A
like
little.
quite hey, like there's a bit more like I don't want to say like shameless plugging and camaraderie and sense of community, but it does seem like there is a lot of like cross platforms and like supporting each other a little bit more, and no hate to the West Coast, because it's not like that. You guys are awesome. I just mean shameless in the way that no one's even worried about what it really looks like. They're like, we're out here doing this, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing when it comes to artistry.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have enough of an opinion about BC, I think, because my time in BC has been like really positive, I would say. People have been really, supportive whenever I go, so yeah, I definitely feel, that same kind of sense of like community there. But yeah, I mean, it's different, like different styles of music for sure. I would say like, yeah, I mean, every place is unique. And I don't know, like, because I don't live in BC, like, I don't know how, like, hard or, like, easy it is to collab, even though, like, a lot of my collabs are actually, like, long distance,
Right.
Like, my first or my second EP that I put out, Clear with, like, Kobriyama, like, he lives in LA, I've collaborated with like Illa J, who's from Detroit. He lives in Vegas now. My first EDM track, with Spire. He was from Australia. So a lot of these collabs happen online anyway. So
Right.
but yeah, I would say like my live performance experience, I definitely like got like from the local musicians here for sure, and just like jamming and going, to open mics and like just meeting people and seeing what they're doing kind of thing. Yeah. There's definitely like a good scene here for that. It's like a good incubator for like new artists.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I didn't mean to pit you against the West Coast. I was like, tell me all about the
Spill the tea.
Yeah, I'm like, give me the
Nah,
dirt,
I love
girl.
the West Coast. I love the West Coast.
Yeah, the conversations that I've had about the West Coast is and the reason why I was like, they're not as shameless is because they all love each other so much and there's a lot of respect, but I feel like they're a bit more reserved when it comes to get like just pushing their content, or maybe it actually has more to do with how the content's being pushed, and maybe it's bigger than what they're doing, because I'm sure that they want their content out there just as much as everybody else, but it seems a little bit, I don't know, maybe I'm not saying this correctly, but from when things are coming out of like central Canada, it seems to come out with a little bit more explosion, even though the the standard is the same across the board. So it might just be how how it's being put out there. But
it could also just be, like like, I mean, from Halifax too, it's like, scenes have their own like little bubbles as well sometimes,
Yeah,
like in the West Coast too, but yeah, ideally we want to go worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely global.
That's the goal.
For sure it is. It's nice because your music translates well in pretty much any setting under any circumstance. That was the one thing that I noticed as soon as I put it on. I was like, I could play this for anybody in any space, and it just translates so well. Like I could play it in my
Thank
car, I
you.
can play it at the park. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's easy to listen to. It seems sentimental. I don't know if
Mm.
that's the word I mean, because it feels like it's put out there with love and respect, and it seems sentimental, even though it's super fun and like energized and exciting. And I was just like, there's an undertone about it that seems like it reminded me of like the little trinkets that we would leave in like our jewelry box. And I was like, there's something really
Mm.
sweet and intimate about what you're saying and how you're saying it. So
Oh,
beautiful,
that's
beautiful.
so sweet. Thank you. I love that like analogy too because like I love my trinkets.
Oh,
I'm a collector of trinkets.
are
I'm
you?
very I am. It's a problem. But I'm very sentimental. I am. And I think like I treat every song that way. And I am like a bit of like I don't know, a perfectionist, I would say. Like vibes matter to me a lot.
Yeah,
I would say feeling over, like perfection, is
yeah,
always what I strive for, like with my music. Like the feeling needs to come through over like, the production quality. Like although like those things are important, like if I don't feel like I'm singing like from my heart or that, these are words that resonate with me, then yeah, like I'm not going to release it. Like it's not going to come out right. And, that's kind of not what I'm about. So
mhm,
I try to treat each song that way. Like it is really important for me to like preserve like the emotion, in a song, and like the feeling, like don't fix it if it's not broken, like
true statement.
don't get me to record it like 50 million times, like, like trust, like this is, uh, uh, sometimes where like collabs can get a little hairy or whatever, but
Right.
yeah,
You're
I
like,
think like,
one take and we're good, and you sit with
well,
that
I'm definitely not
confidence.
a one taker, that's for sure. I'll sit in my studio for like a good like 2 hours.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like I try to get it right during the first session for sure because
Yeah.
I think like there's something to be said about just like capturing like the emotion of that like point in
Yeah.
time, you
Mhm.
know? That's like really important to me. And like yeah, if something doesn't feel authentic, then like I'm not going to be happy to put it out?
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's so important. I remember when what was that movie called? Josie and the Pussycat Dolls came out, and I was like, "Whoa." Like groups and music and stuff is so curated and like
Mm,
like masterful, and all this like puppetry happening in the background, and I was so overwhelmed by the idea that that's how music was produced, and like broke my heart. I was like, this can't be it. Like there's no way that this is happening, and I don't know how much truth was in that, but it seemed to me like they knew what they were talking about. There's a reason why that came out maybe at that particular time, right? Because that's like the 90s and the early 2000s was like, boy band, girl band, pop
for
central.
sure.
So I think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
spoke volumes to like what was happening in the industry. But as we've moved forward, and some of the big kind of record labels they had no choice but to kind of let go of some of it, and the albums have stayed, the catalogs have stayed with the owners a little bit more, right? Like I think
Mm,
people like
yeah.
E40 and like Tech and everybody was like, nah, we ain't selling all this, like we're keeping it. I think it's,
Mhm.
it's just super cool to see, and it definitely shows like in your music that you have like big building production, but in an
Yeah.
intimate way, right? Like, because it's like it sounds wicked awesome, but you can tell that you're like, these are my reservations, and why, and like you haven't like
Yeah.
really go to the
Well, for sure. Like I wouldn't consider my music like like it's radio friendly, but I would say
Mhm.
like it's not like super like marketable for like the top pop 100, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like
yeah,
I'm not trying to make a product.
yeah,
Um and I think like, making music and the music business are like two different things. You
hmm,
know? I think like and it's tough. I find like a lot of artists like struggle because I think all we want to do is just make music, and just make art and just like share it, but like there's so many like other things to consider now, so that people can find your music. um and
Yeah.
there's a lot of attention placed on like branding and and like
Merch.
aesthetic and just
Yeah.
being kind of put into a box. And
Well,
I
brand
think like
power is everything nowadays. If you don't have brand
yeah.
power, forget it. Like even one piece acoustic like in flip-flops, like it's still so tightly branded. It's like the only way that you can really do it though, because once we
Mm.
lost the good old collected album, like the CD, we lost the artistry kind of
Mm.
behind it, right? Like so
Yeah, well, I feel like we don't have as much of an attention span as we used to, where we used to sit and listen to a full album, on our
yeah.
bedroom floors. And like now it's just like, okay, what single am I obsessed with like today? You know?
Yeah.
And it constantly changes and it's moving faster. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm not like opposed to it. I do think, there's an advantage to like having, a single or an EP versus like waiting all year to release like one big album, and it like
Mhm.
may or may not work out, like it does make sense from like a marketing point to like stagger releases sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, just in terms of just like how things have changed, like yeah, like I think like we need more stimulation, and it's like you need to like grab people right away. So it's hard, like it's very competitive. But I think if you get too caught up in that, like you'll go crazy. Sure.
It's so sad. I
Like
mean, it's so sad because I mean, our generation, or I know I can speak for my generation, like when that picture that you painted on the floor in your room when you finally saved up your like 1999 for a full 22 song album, that was like a big deal, right? You go to H&M or whatever
yeah.
record store, it was like a whole outing, and like you had to get there first and then flip through everything.
Mhm.
And I'm sure our parents can speak about it with records and stuff like that, but when you experienced it the way that the artist um wanted it to be heard from beginning to end.
Yeah,
It had like a middle, and
exactly.
there was like the point pieces and the intro and the outro and like all the fun things that went with it, because there's so much more to it than just the cuts themselves. So like
Totally.
how do you find like creative ways to still give um that that experience without being able to do it necessarily in the way of like, of
Yeah, well, I think that's why it's taken me like 4 years to release a
right,
second solo EP.
right.
Because yeah, I've just kind of been like, accumulating, just like building up my repertoire. Um, and not every song makes the cut either. And then, just like figuring, like curating, like a flow that makes sense. Because you are sort of like telling a story in a way. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think like songs can have like their moments, like, can exist on their own and still be meaningful, you know. It
Yeah.
can still be appreciated, uh, in that format, as a single or, an EP.
Mm.
Yeah, it's nice to have the options, honestly, because it is a lot goes into an album. And the fact that it is more like you can just like drop singles and like, that works. Like that's also like a good thing too. But
Yeah, that's
um
fair. That's totally
but yeah,
fair.
it's a different game now for sure. And like I feel like you have to think a lot about like social media. Social media is like consumes a lot of like my headspace more than I would probably like.
Right.
Um, just because like, until I like get to the level where I can like have my own social media team, like I'm doing it all for sure. And a lot of us are just doing it all ourselves, shooting, editing,
Right.
curating, you know, and it's
Moderating, yeah, tagging, adding as
yeah,
we're going. Yeah, totally, yeah. Yeah.
emailing, promoting, like all this stuff. It's like, it's
Mhm.
it's hard for one person. So, it definitely is important to like build a team as well, which I've started to do. Like I have two managers, two co-managers right now that yeah are helping me reach my goals.
Very nice.
But
Very nice.
it's like it's hard to do it all on your own. But even with that, like I get overwhelmed for sure. Like being consistent with posting and just like trying to come up with content all the time when all I really want to do is just like make music, man. And
Mm-hmm.
get someone else to like do that shit for me, even though I'm like a video
Yeah, you have
video
all the things.
editor.
Yeah,
I have all the tools to do it, right? But like that's
totally.
the thing, like it's my day job, so it's like at the end of the day, do I want to edit more or do I want to make music? I want to make
Yeah,
music.
yeah, totally.
So
And you
it's a bit
almost
of a
have
balancing
to,
act.
yeah, and you almost have to be like, I'm really spoiled that way. I got really lucky, but in order to find somebody like, because I have Calico Hunt, right? And she's amazing.
Mm.
Like the amount of energy and time that she puts into Pinecase is like to the point
Oh,
where I'm
she's
like,
great.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know how to pay you, but I'm just gonna give you 50%, right? Like, because it's not even a conversation about you know, how do you monetize something that's that amount of energy and space? And unless you have somebody that's
Mm.
like for you like that, then
Mm.
how do you find somebody to even trust with your content or that they're hitting the right?
Yeah.
Because you can put all the energy into it that you want, but if you're not hitting the algorithm right, it's just like a total waste of energy, right? Like you really have to be all in or not at all. It's wild out there.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, I mean, like as far as like building your team goes as well, like it's like there like I do a lot of skill shares, like
Mm,
trades, with other artists, like I'll teach them how to, like do editing and they'll help me with this, or, like they'll send me a beat and I'll feature on their track, you know. Like
nice.
there's, it doesn't have to be all about like money, as long as it's like, yeah, like an equal exchange. There are ways you can like build up your team, like your community. So I've been trying to lean into that a little more because it's freaking hard to do it all on your own, man. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand that. But you do a beautiful job of it, that's for sure. I think you whoever you got on your side, it's obvious that they're definitely Team Fauna, and that's super important. So, if
Thank
I'm
you.
thinking of the right people, because I've been creeping on TikTok lately.
Yeah,
You
shout
guys,
out to Witch Betty, Elizabeth
yeah,
Burdock, and Serena
yeah,
Wilson. And
yeah.
Serena
Okay,
Wilson
that's
from Montreal. Yeah,
yeah.
those are my co-managers. Yeah, shout out to Hot Tramp. She's been helping me out here and there. That's like a
Very cool.
local Montreal label. So yeah,
Nice.
got a little squad over here.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like it has to be, yeah, you guys got to roll deep together or like, it's not like it used to
Yeah,
be, right? It's even when
I
you're like
can.
posting, you're like, check me, we good, like we're good to go. Because if they're not your girls or they're not your people, like they'll leave you out there, right? Like it's like a full
Yeah,
360. It's not just the audio anymore. It's like the audio, the video, the
for
reels, the
sure.
hashtags, and the yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's good to
wild.
have the feedback for sure.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think if anyone's starting out, like is really struggling, like invest in yourself, like, you know, um, and expand your team because you don't have to do it all. Like, and there's ways to get that, if
Yeah.
you aren't like at that, if you don't have the backing, financial backing or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, explain a little bit more about the job shares because I think that's something that a lot of the youth actually aren't really they don't really even, or maybe I'm old and I just didn't know, but I learned about this not should have learned about it a long time ago, but it's kind of interesting and it's basically just sharing like trade for trade. Is that the conversation
Mm.
that we're having?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not so formal. Like it's case by case because it's not always that way. Like, I do have to like charge for some like features. Some are
Hmm.
like, like they're a friend or a friend of a friend. It's kind of case by case. Like I can't, do everything for free because, time isn't infinite, and I am one to spread myself thin already and say yes to
Right.
everything. So yeah, but I like where I'm at right now for sure.
Very cool.
Things are feeling more supported for sure.
Nice. What do you do, just to touch on the mental health spot a little bit, because I think
Hmm.
um, you're admirable in the way that you present yourself. So, like, what are some of the things that you do when maybe you're in a space that you're like overwhelmed and like when it comes to like self-care? Is there specific things that you do?
Oh, for sure. I would say like my mental health like healing journey has been a long one, starting from like when I was a teenager. Like I had a bit of a rocky upbringing. I lost my parents pretty young, like my dad when I was 17, my mom when I was 19. So I had to grow up pretty fast. And my friends, kind of became my family, and kind of my extended family became my like, uh
Yeah.
immediate family. So yeah, like I've gone through a lot of therapy. Um but
Wow.
I don't think it's the only way. Like I've been through like regular talk therapy, I've been on antidepressants, but I don't think that's like it hasn't necessarily always been enough. Like I feel like I've always wanted to go deeper, because often like, you know, medications will treat like the symptoms but not the cause, and they
Right.
can often like, you know, um, you know, prevent you from really getting to like the root like issue, and just kind of like,
Yeah.
like it can have an like it can be like, like yeah, like I've been on and off like throughout my life, like when I've needed it, and when I've needed it, like they really helped like pull me out of a hole. But it's not a a fix all solution. Like it's just kind of like a band-aid. I've always
Right.
kind of treated it as like a temporary thing for me to get back on my feet until like I'm ready to do like the real work. And I have like dabbled in a lot of like holistic healing, like spirituality. I feel like a lot of my self-care and just like healing have come from that, like energy work, just like kind of, yeah, like looking at things and looking at pain and trauma almost with like a spiritual lens, not so much just like a clinical lens. I mean, everybody's different, in what works for them. And you know, I I think both are useful. Like I have a therapist, a regular like talk therapy therapist, and
Right.
I get like occasional, energy healing, done. And I go to cacao ceremonies, and
Very cool.
you know, so yeah, I would say it's like a mix of all of that. Um, and yeah, there's no like one size fits all. I think like there's lots of ways that you can support yourself. But don't think, like the amount of therapists I've gone through, like don't think if you and um yeah, like the search never ends. I feel like you're never fully like aware, fully healed. And I think anybody that thinks that they're like, they have no more learning to do, like has a lot more learning to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I can agree with that
yeah.
100%. I think that once you realize that we're always going to be students, the
Mhm.
healthier, or the even just the idea that maybe um, wellness isn't necessarily the goal, that it's just purely mental health, and it's really about just keeping the conversation open. I think maybe the better off will be, because I mean, happiness is great, but if we're constantly achieving what we think is supposed to look like, then we're not really setting ourselves up for success. So it sounds like you got a pretty good wrap on that, with kind of putting your attention into a multitude of different avenues. That's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, like, I definitely like, have had depressive episodes. It's like,
Mhm.
when you have like depression or like anxiety, like often like you're gonna live with that like for the rest of your life,
Right.
and it's just like finding ways to like manage it, but also like embrace like those parts of yourself. I think like we're quick to like judge ourselves for having mental illness, but often like our what we consider our flaws can also be like our strengths.
Right.
um and they make us who we are, they make us human. So I think it's also like a journey of like self acceptance, all
Yeah.
parts of yourself, the good and the bad. Because yeah, it's like you're not broken just because you have, you know, mental health issues. I think it makes us more interesting, honestly. As long
I,
as you're on, as long as you're on your healing journey, like to me, it's like no matter where you are on your journey, is like as long as you're taking steps,
yeah.
like that's what matters, as long as you like keep showing up for yourself. It doesn't matter if like, you relapse or, like it's like healing
Mhm.
is not linear. Healing is like this.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and that's been my experience, like for sure.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you said a lot of those things because I've heard a lot lately, and people, um, and relapsing is not specific to substances. Relapsing can be, a multitude of things. Codependency is one of them. Eating,
Mm,
self harm, whatever, whatever, whatever. List goes on. But um, I've heard a lot about people trying to get away from like day counting, like kind of the traditional AA style of like, oh, I have this many good days or whatever.
mm,
Because the idea of the failure when you've
yeah,
fallen is so great that it actually prohibits people from getting like wanting to get help once again, and like this shame and
yeah,
stigma that comes with it. So I'm really glad you said those things because everyone needs to hear it. Like it's
mm.
just it's like it's okay. It's okay to
Yeah,
be
man.
not okay. It's okay to show all the sides, the good, the bad, the ugly, that makes what makes
Hmm.
us my mom always says I'm older, uglier, and wiser than you. And I always thought that was really funny because she's like, the more you're learning, the more interesting you become, and like, which is exactly what you're saying. Like, if everything was, what was it at the beginning? If you're the not toxic happy, um, or ignorance is bliss. But if you're not acknowledging the negative at all, then yeah, it's a
And
downhill
yeah,
slope for
well, for sure, it's you can't have the dark without the light. That's it. And often it is like one step forward, two steps back, but that's still moving
yeah.
forward, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's just how it is. Like we're not robots. Like, it takes time to change habits and like rewrite the script in our head, and also like heal our relationship with ourselves and like with others,
Mhm.
especially ourselves, and it takes time and a lot of repetition and a lot of trial and error, so you just got to give yourself some grace. And I think like it can be hard because I think like a lot of us grew up around people that, maybe shamed us for being sensitive or like having too many feelings, and
Yep.
up until recently it's been a bad thing to be emotional, or have big feelings. That's how I grew up, at least, and I know a lot of people that did grow up like where it wasn't encouraged to be vulnerable or vocal about like your mental health and stuff like that. So you know um yeah, like maybe it's easier for like the younger generation, but at least like my generation and a lot of older generations, I find like it's been harder to like get past the taboo of like talking about it and normalizing it.
Yeah.
um but I think we're getting to that point now for sure.
Yeah, it comes out. There's so many like advocacy programs and massive. initiatives, right? Like hashtag speak up and all of those hashtag end stigma and stuff. Because I think we come from a place where it was like suck it up and deal with it, or if you were like an over emotional female, it was like, that's when like people would say just nasty.
Are you on your period?
And I was just gonna say, like, good news tampon, like, right?
Oh yeah, I've heard it all.
Yeah, exactly. It's freaking wild, but
yeah.
But at the same time, I think the more that we talk about it, and we need to start appreciating the conversation, and our generation needs to not look at it maybe like it's whining from the next generation. I think there's a lot of us that are like, oh my God, what? And I'm like, no, wait. We asked for this. We asked for everyone to start talking about it. Just holding on a second. Because it can be challenging too sometimes when people talk about things that might not be as serious to you, and like acknowledging that everyone has a different margin of happiness or of stress, or what it means to them to not be coping, whatever. I just want to take the time to say, obviously, saying sorry is not going to fix anything, but all the respect when for your loss.
Thank you.
That. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
They're still with me for sure.
Of course.
Yeah, I do. I consider myself a spiritual person, and I think like, you can be an atheist, you can be, like more open-minded. It's really just like, what sits well in your heart, like what feels good for you, and yeah, like that's my truth. And yeah, like obviously I miss them very much. I think of my mom like every day. She was a saint. But yeah, like I try to keep their memory alive,
Of course.
Keep the torch burning for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, as their offspring, you don't really have a choice but to do that naturally, right? I'm sure it comes out in all sorts of ways that you don't even realize all the time.
Oh, for sure. No, I learn new things about myself all the time, and also just like, oh yeah, that's like kind of like, similar to what my mom would do, or like, like I still like I see my parents like in myself too, and also in like my siblings, so yeah, like I still feel like they're close to me like in some ways. And that like mindset has definitely like helped me accept, but yeah, it's like it's easy for me to like talk about because like it's been a while, it's been a long time,
right.
And I have talked about it a lot, but yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously that's life though, but everybody's gonna have to go through that eventually, it's just I had to go through it like very early on, but
right.
It's like we're all gonna face like grief at one point or another.
I didn't understand when I was growing up that people didn't. Like, I didn't know that there was people that had never experienced that until they were waiting for their grandparents to pass on well into their adulthood. I unfortunately came from a space where I was absolutely spoiled with so many people to love, but just by a sheer numbers game, it's just more people to ultimately lose for a multitude of reasons. And so I was really like kind of struck by the idea that people had gone their whole life with never experiencing that hurt or sense of loss. But now we're in a climate where unfortunately, with the way the streets are, however you want to talk about like the pharmaceuticals side of it or whatever, both, right? We're just in a space where like it's become commonplace. Like I can't, and I can speak for Pinecase as a company, like we can't keep up with the RIP letter requests in our inbox.
Yeah.
It is devastating. Like
that's wild to me.
It's insane.
But yeah.
So yeah, I can,
for sure. Well, especially in the West Coast, like I know, like, yeah, that's like that's common, and more so there than in other places. I mean, like depending on the area, but like also it's like who you're friends with too, and who you surround yourself with, and but it's crazy. You're right. Like I mean, like even like my friend and manager Liz, like all the people that she's like told me about that she's lost, due to like due to substance abuse or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's all like really good people, like just gone too soon.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
but it's life. It's like until it kind of hits you in the face and you have like kind of the rug pulled from under you, like you never see it coming, right? Like
mhm.
until you experience that, like you really are like moving through life like with, like that blissful ignorance almost, until it's like boom, and then it's like,
Wow.
oh, this is also a part of life. Like this is also like the
Yeah.
other side of, um what we experience. So yeah. It's
Fawna,
it's sorry, you go ahead.
no, I have to tell you that it is such a privilege to talk to somebody who is like, this happens and it's unfortunate, um, but it happens. And not only are you talking about it in such a way that it's respect, not dismissive, but respectful, but you're talking about two people who, um, they're your parents, and so I appreciate your tenacity and your backbone, because as a mom and a godmom and an aunt, it is something that I'm constantly dealing with, and I'm a bit stern when it comes to this particular situation, when it comes to grief. And so to have
Mm,
another example of why it's important to stay together and be a positive and a healthy example, of
mhm.
what you can do with grief, and maybe you can turn it into artistic expression, or just a great reason to be kind to other people. Yeah, it's an absolute honor and a privilege. So thank you so much. I
No, my
appreciate it.
pleasure. Yeah, I mean, it can be, it's like, you can there's a silver lining, like, I mean, like I've transmuted a lot of, like my grief, like through my music. Like it has been, a way for me to like heal that. And it does like broaden your perspective and also like make you realize like, man, like life really is precious,
Mhm.
like let's make the most of it, like don't sweat the small stuff, you
Yeah,
know? And I
yeah,
think like until you experience that, like, it might not hit you in that way, but I definitely like wouldn't be the person I am today. Like had things not gone down the way that they did. Like I've been through a lot and it took me a lot to get here, but
mhm,
like I've built like a really solid, like chosen family,
mhm.
really supportive friends, really supportive like partners. So yeah, like I'm in a good place, Find
Good,
your
good.
find your chosen family too. Like they're just as important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Yeah, it's not necessarily all about blood, right? Not all of us even have the privilege of having that, for a whole bunch of reasons. So yeah, chosen family. I like that. That's good. It's good. I mean, I have one, so I shouldn't act like I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's nice to hear other
Mm.
people say it too. So very cool.
Yeah, I
What
mean, there can be many definitions of family, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, yeah. Well, and I mean, even outside of, like, the seriousness of that, like, we are in a place where blended homes are just the standard, and kids are looking outside of that space now for maybe that comfort, and not no shade to the step parents or anybody for any reason, but, I think the family, just by sheer, definition, has completely changed, and thank
Mhm.
Christ, because it's definitely more inclusive and more
Yeah.
understanding, right? Not everybody comes from the perfect white picket fence situation. So I think we're,
No, for sure. And we deserve all the support we can get, you know?
yeah, definitely,
Um,
definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Everyone does.
Hmm. Cool. Well, what can I mean, you talked about all of the great things. Is there anything happening in the short term that we can plug real quick before we sign off? So maybe send off somebody with a space to go to?
Ooh, well, you can check out all my music that I've already released.
Yeah.
Fawna, Fawna, on all platforms. I'm gonna have a bunch of new releases this summer coming out with cola, gin. I've got some collabs on my upcoming EP, with Blanche, Aerosin, Kobayama. So we got a lot of collaborations that I'm really excited to share that are all going to be released within the summer and the fall. So stay tuned. And yeah, you can stream my music that's already released. But yeah, and for anybody that's going to Future Forests, I'll see you there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time.
Yes, everyone go and check that out. August 9th. I mean, I can't forget that date for sure. And if you haven't
weekend of, it's a full camping weekend.
Is it I was gonna say it's not the long weekend though in August. That's the first weekend, I believe, right? I don't need to check.
Yeah, no. So it goes from the 9th, 10th, 11th, I'm pretty sure. The weekend of the 9th. But it's like an overnight camping, like festival type of thing.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys haven't already gone over and follow, shared, subscribed, all the things on all the platforms, please go and do that for the lovely Fawna. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Casey with Pinecase. See you next Tuesday.
Reinvented my whole life, mental MacGyver. One door shut, another open up. Rider. Listen, battle drums in the distance, moving with enough force like army tank pistons. Pray for the strength of Jah to fight resistance. Fight mode, shields up, moving with resilience.
The strength of 1,000 lion and the strength of 1,000 giant. Please stay strong. Please stay strong. With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong.